Today, we are diving into one of the most bizarre medical texts ever published. It's from the 19th century, and it's a catalog of the absolute extremes of human existence, a world of anomalies and curiosities that will make you rethink what normal even means. You know, the authors themselves, George Gould and Walter Pyle, said it best right in their preface. They basically set out to prove this one simple idea, that the reality of the human body is way, way more unbelievable than anything you could ever make up. And as we're about to see, they make a pretty compelling case.
But this book wasn't just about sensationalism, not at all. The whole philosophy behind it was that by studying these really strange, exceptional cases, we get, and I'm quoting here, the most searching glimpses into the heart of the mystery of the ordinary. In other words, you have to look at the weird to really understand the everyday.
Okay, first up, the body's extremes. We're going to start with the most visible anomalies, the kinds of physical marvels and malformations that really push the boundaries of what a human body could even be.
So, let's talk about size. The book does a great job of separating fact from folklore. It turns out, a lot of the old stories about giants came from people digging up mastodon bones and just assuming they were human. The tallest man they could actually verify was just under 8'3". Dwarfs, though, they were a well-documented reality, sometimes even artificially created back in ancient Rome. And get this, they could often have children of perfectly normal height. The text also gets into some incredible extremes when it comes to fertility. For example, there's an epitaph in Conway for a man named Nicholas Hooks. He was his father's 41st child. Yep, 41st.
And if you think that's a lot, there was a Mr. Pearsons who lived to be 96. Over the course of 4 marriages, he fathered a staggering 53 children.
And then, for the most wild claim of all, we have Luigi Erba, an Italian gentleman who supposedly fathered 370 children in just 7 years. Now, that one is unverified, but stories like these just show how fascinated the era was with the absolute limits of human reproduction.
Now, the book uses the historical term major terata, which was a 19th century phrase for what they called living monsters. It's a term we would never use today, thankfully, but the book's documentation is fascinating because it focuses on their lives. It talks about Chang and Ang, the original Siamese twins, who got married and had families. It talks about Joseph Merrick, the elephant man, and the complex person behind the condition. And it tells the stories of others, like Lulu and the Aztec children, and how they navigated the world.
Okay, so we've seen the extremes of the human form, but what could the human body do? This next section is all about the absolute limits of strength, speed, and our ability to endure the seemingly impossible. Just look at these athletic records from the late 1800s. I mean, a 100-yard dash under 10 seconds. That's impressive even today. But the endurance feats are just on another level entirely. These athletes, called pedestrians, would compete in multi-day walking races and could cover over 600 miles in 6 days. To put that in perspective, that's like running 4 marathons a day every single day for a week. And what about pure raw strength? Well, the book talks about a New York policeman named Selig Whitman, nicknamed Ajax, who could apparently lift 2,000 pounds, a literal ton. But here's what's even crazier. Ajax could supposedly support 450 pounds using only his teeth. Just think about the sheer force on your jaw and neck to do something like that. It's almost unimaginable. Then you have the complete opposite end of the spectrum, extreme flexibility. Contortionists were huge attractions, and one American performer, Charles Warren, was so flexible he earned this memorable nickname. Apparently, even as a kid, his thigh bones would just constantly slip out of their sockets. The power of the mind over the body really comes into focus in the book's section on pain. It's filled with these shocking displays, from religious rituals with hooks pierced through flesh to performers literally swallowing live scorpions. These weren't just magic tricks. They were demonstrations of an ability to just turn off pain in a way that would incapacitate most of us. All right, from the physical, we're now going inward to the most mysterious frontier of all, the human mind. This section covers these strange anomalies of consciousness, memory, and perception that doctors were just starting to try and understand. Way before we had modern terms like dissociative identity disorder, 19th century doctors were wrestling with this phenomenon they called double consciousness. This was their term for people who seemed to have two totally separate personalities, each with its own memories and its own way of being, completely walled off from the other. And the case of Mary Reynolds is just one of the most compelling stories you'll ever hear. Imagine this. You wake up one day at age 18 and your memory is completely gone. You're like a newborn. That was her reality. For the next 16 years, she would flip between her original, quiet personality and this new, loud, outgoing one, with a total wall of amnesia between them. And then, at 36, they just merged. It's this incredible story of a fractured self finding its way back together. The book also really highlights the brain's incredible ability to adapt. When one sense is gone, the others can step up in amazing ways. Helen Keller learned to hear people walking up to her by feeling the vibrations through the floor. Another woman, Edith Thomas, who was also blind and deaf, actually learned to speak by placing her hands on her teacher's throat and lips, feeling the muscle movements. But the book also explores the dark side of an altered mind, especially sleepwalking. And this quote, it comes from one of the most tragic stories in the whole text. It's about a man who, in his sleep, dreamed a wild animal was attacking his infant child. He jumped up to fight it off, and when he woke up, he was faced with the devastating reality that he had killed his own baby in the struggle. And so, that brings us full circle. This collection of shocking and strange stories, it's not just a 19th century freak show. It's a profound reminder that our so-called normal existence, our bodies, our minds, it's actually a pretty fragile and mysterious thing, balanced on a knife's edge. Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. We've just explored the curiosities of the past, but what about right now? What are the conditions that we see as normal, or maybe just a little puzzling today, that doctors 150 years from now will look back on as the strange and wonderful anomalies of our time? It's a pretty fascinating question.